Okay.
Happiness.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Smudcast number 773, Trope Talk, last of their kind. We're doing a red video. This came out 2 months ago, has over 500,000 views. Good for her. I'm sure it's delightful. And
500,000.
And people love this stuff. And hopefully she is completely boring. And she's just reading the tvtropes.org page. And we're all like,
as usual.
Yeah, this is right.
The one that she's written?
I don't know. she may as well have. She says so many things that I disagree with, or
here's my source, TV Tropes, the page I wrote. My sources that I made it up.
Written by Red.
Who knows? Well, it's always weird with her. We're hopefully not going to pause too much, and we can just say, yeah, she's right. Let's do a victory lap. And
I mostly just use TV tropes for the game breaker entries in video games because a bit of a power gamer, so I like looking for stuff that gives me a massive edge.
It does help. It does help when you have a video game on TV tropes that has references you weren't expecting or didn't know because you didn't have time to read or think about all the references or the themes. So,
no, I'm not looking for the references. I'm looking for the overpowered stuff.
Oh. That's a specific one. Okay, fair enough. Anyway, how long is this? 22 minutes? 22 minutes, 45 seconds. All right, we're hoping for, what was that advertisement she always had? Was it like that RPG writing thing? I can't remember what it was.
Fireplace thing.
Yeah, it was some sort of write your own scenario tool.
Half chimney.
It was either that or some sort of security protection thing that everyone is also selling. VPN. I don't know. It's one of those. Anyway, let's get going. Oh, there's captions. Fantastic. In Dutch, even.
Hooray.
I can't wait to read those in Dutch. Anyway, let's get going.
For a story, the number one rule of thumb you'll generally hear is that they need to be immediately identifiable in some way, which means something about them needs to be unique to them among the rest of the characters.
So they're uniquely identifiable, which means they have to be different from everyone else. No.
You mean they are their own people, they are characters.
That's fine.
They're not NPCs. They're not the grey mass.
But the way she said it was, it needs to be unique to them amongst the rest. No, you could have two characters that are both soldiers and they're both white and they're both in their 20s.
Yeah, but I think the unique thing would be their interests. Like one of them might be a ladies' man and might constantly be on every woman like Brock, whereas the other one might be more bookish, might be more into reading and stuff.
Yeah, but that's
that would technically be a unique thing, but
yeah, that would be the sane interpretation, and that would be about the substance of the character. And what she uses here to illustrate,
I think she means
is right silhouette, which is something absolutely superficial, which is how all these horrible people today write. They only write stereotypes.
Well, just the way she described that is wrong. You do not do it to be unique. When you write a character in a scenario, you have to give them the reason why they're there, the motivation why they're there, and that comes out through their actions. You don't say, well, this person has a red scarf. The other person doesn't even wear one. They're unique. It's like, that's not a thing. Like, you're just describing what they look like, or describing their personality, or describing some facet of their existence. It's not unique to them per se. You don't have to do this. You do this as you go, as you learn about them by their actions. You don't have to literally point out this person is unique because they have one gold tooth on their bottom left incisor. And you're like, wow, thanks, Red. That's great. No. Anyway.
Will talk about silhouettes or avoiding same-face syndrome. Writers will talk about speech patterns or accents to make it clear who's saying what in the dialogue. And, of course, the bane of every character designer's existence is hearing, oh, hey, that looks just like this other character from this much more well-known thing. It's an odd little fallacy that afflicts artists of all stripes. This idea that a work of art must justify its existence by...
That means you're not good at the reading and the watching and the consuming of art to make your own thing.
It also is a nice counter argument to people have to see themselves on screen. They need characters that look like them, by which you imply that all the black women are misshapen, overweight, weirdly haired lesbians.
Yeah, there was a Kickstarter, I think last week. I was about to invest in it, but I might do it later. Anyway, it looks like a white-haired Cloud Strife dude with a big sword. Not spiky hair, but sort of, whatever styled hair. It has all the elements of Persona, so you have social links. It's got dating, so you could do whatever the hell that means. So it's like, all the things I want in a Final Fantasy clone with Persona mechanics. I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool. But there are some problems with that. So yeah,
I want someone to post into stream memes a picture of a Tachikoma, because in Ghost in the Shell there's a spider tank called a Tachikoma, and they all have their own unique personalities, but they all look exactly the same. They all develop their own personalities despite them having all the exact same memories in the first series.
Yeah, they have their network system. They all sound the same. They all look the same, but they do. There's an episode where they argue, and they're all having.
They sound the same in the original Japanese version because they've got the same voice actor, but in the dub they've got different voice actors to make it easy to tell which one's which.
Because they think the American audience is dumb.
Yeah.
Great. But I remember that in the original, the Tachikomas may have the same voice actor, but over time he begins to voice them a little different, not in sound, because that's also voice changed over that, because nobody speaks that high pitched and and mechanical. But they all begin to use their own inflections or speeds at which they talk, and that's where the little personality comes in. It's a very, very neat little detail that is easily overlooked.
I'd say so. It's very difficult to show characterization when you are not differentiating how someone or something walks and talks. That's the common way of describing someone differently. So with a networked AI battle tank thing that is basically Spider-Man, you could do some fun things with that.
And that is the with standalone complex specifically, that is interesting, because the entire thing of Ghost in the Shell is about what is consciousness.
Yeah.
And then you play that in the Tachikomas, and what is individuality. So this is a great counterexample to what Red is babbling here.
Be unique, whether that's an individual character or a story concept. Total unique creator to pursue, but it's not like how stories work. I mean, this is a series where we talk about tropes. Tropes are recurring patterns in storytelling that occur over and over again, frequently unintentionally on the part of the writer. Most people don't set out to build a story out of a bunch of pieces of other stories.
Frequently and unintentionally on the part of the writer. I honestly do not...
Yeah, that's not necessarily true.
I do not think a definition of a trope is a thing that the writer does unintentionally. They purposely want the Italian mobster stereotype, or the gung-ho friend, or whatever, and they do that because that's it. That's all they've got, and they're working with that idea, and they develop it as they go. That's fine.
Yeah, if someone's making a spaghetti western, they're gonna have a high noon shootout.
Yeah, and those types of characters are useful because they're easily comprehensible by the audience. You don't need to tell much. You don't need to give a lot of backstory. You just know, that's that type of person. When you do the main characters or main character, you can be more nuanced. You can go more into detail, into depth. Or you can, with those stereotypical characters, then if you keep them and go into their depth, that you find some, you could say, surprising elements, some subversive part that turns the character around, that the Italian mobster is just a front that he does to keep himself and his family fed, but it's not that he doesn't actually like doing it. But that's what you do in the second step.
All right.
I mean, didn't Road to Perdition do something like that? It had the son witnessed a murder and the dad turned against the mob to keep him safe.
I have not seen a lot of westerns. I'm sorry.
That's
No. Road to it's a
Spaghetti.
movie. It's a mobster movie. Road to Perdition.
I know it's set
same
during the was it after or during the Roaring 20s? I can't remember exactly. Prohibition was set there.
I'm not sure when it's set. Hold on. I'll have to look that up. Road to Perdition. 2002. But Wisp, it's a good mafia movie.
I think it was fairly well acted. They got a lot of actors that you might recognize in there, and I was not expecting Tom Hanks. That's why it turned my eye. I was like, wait a second.
So it's set 1931 during the Great Depression.
Okay. So I was a bit off. All right.
I'll put it on the list.
Okay.
Every story can be broken down into elements that aren't unique to that story, and that is a completely fine and neutral thing. The pursuit of originality at all costs can actually pressure writers to shy away from legitimately good writing decisions in the name of surprising their audience with something they've never seen before. Sometimes a part of storytelling happens a lot because it works, and sometimes you've never seen something before because it doesn't. But
okay.
Sometimes you've never seen something before because you haven't seen a lot yet, like being 8 years old, or 12,
or because it's
or 25, or J.
Been done.
This is a very subjective. It's a very subjective interpretation of what does and does not work. Just because you haven't seen it before, that's pretty silly. If I've never seen a car, and someone's describing it to me in a story, I'm like, "What is this magical contraption they're talking about with all these gears and dials and switches?" It's like, oh, but if I'm a
that's
car,
a plane.
Yeah, if I'm a car mechanic, it's like, why are you describing a car? Just get on with the story. Anyway,
I still love how that ancient.
Wait, that's a Tolkien story.
Yeah, how that ancient, really enjoyable Disney movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy, did that on film. That's the story in Africa from the point of view of an indigenous guy.
Oh yeah,
people with the peppercorn hair. And a plane flew by and threw out a Coca-Cola bottle, a glass bottle. And they have no access to glass. And then the bottle, so this is basically this gift from the gods, it came from the sky, is this super hard material that they managed to put to use as a general purpose tool. But since there was only one, it caused strife because everybody wanted to use it at the same time. And so the hero of the story took it upon himself to decide to bring the gift from the gods back to the gods.
Yeah.
And so he went on a journey, and eventually he came across he came to a road, and there was a black man in a blue shirt driving on the most torn apart car. Like it was basically just a chassis and the seat and the wheel. And the narrator describes the thoughts of the native as, I came across a god. He had a strange blue skin and rode a strange animal.
Yeah.
And described the car as the strange animal.
And he talks about how the fire coming out of his mouth and smoke coming out of his nose is because he's smoking.
Oh yes. It's totally that's God, of course.
Could you please take this tool? We do not want it anymore. It's causing us problems. He's like, what? What are you talking about?
Because he doesn't speak the same language. He doesn't know what he wants.
So he finds the end of the world and he just throws the thing off the end. Like, okay, whatever. Anyway.
The ocean.
Beautiful movie.
But while it's healthy to obsess over making your story totally distinct from every other story in the world, there is a legitimate benefit to making sure that elements of your own story don't repeat too often. Within the context of your own work, it can be very helpful to make sure that individual characters don't share too much in common with each other, or specific plot.
Why? Why not? Why wouldn't I want a character to be just like the villain or just like the main character, to mirror them and to tell a side story very similar to the actual main plot, to show a parallel between personalities and how they would operate in this context? You do that all the time. In fact, that's what you should be doing in stories. If you have completely different other characters having completely different other plots, I'm like, why are you telling me this other story that has no theme, no plot, no relation to the main one?
And hey, this here worked really well in the Twilight movies and that other weird thing that the author made, I think Souls or something, where I could not tell apart the males the male love interests in that in that movie, because they looked all the exact same, acted exactly the same, that I thought there were only two, until near the end of the movie there was the shot where all three are in the same shot, and I thought, oh, it's three guys.
She is a fucking horrible writer.
But hey, the women loved it. Mainly the 40+ ones.
And the scene of having like multiple tertiary or secondary characters going along with the plan. I'm playing a game that has over 100, I think it's over 120 collectible characters. And
yeah, I should have that on Switch, but it's not out yet. It's not out until May.
Yeah, the Switch
21st.
The Switch port is kind of broken right now. Apparently, it's called Uden Chronicle. But the fact that
100 heroes.
Yeah, the fact that you have a team of people in a large number that actually do agree with you because you're the leader of a war team and they're trying to save the country, and they're like, "Oh, this is our only recourse. We have to go with you. I agree with whatever you're doing." And there's not one guy I can think of that disagrees so far. Usually, in some of these stories, they have like a spy or someone who disagrees. They go their own way. It hasn't happened yet, but it can. But that's not the point.
Really?
So far,
I mean, you all share a common goal, but there's nobody who disagrees with you on anything.
On the main plot, no, they all go along with you. So that's fine. You don't have to have disagreements in the ranks.
Well, the main plot is the rebellion.
Yeah, and the initial conflict is between the Empire and the what's it called? The League of Nations, and some of the people from the Empire defect, and they join the Alliance, which is what you are. So you are usually seen as the good guy, but you're seen as a rebel from the Empire's perspective. That's fine. So this is good. You could have both. You could have them all agree. You could have all of them disagree. It doesn't make a difference. I just
have you seen how bad they fucked the localization?
That's a whole other ball game. Let's not get into that. I just don't like the way she's describing this. Like, oh, you should do it this way. It's like, no, do it any way you want, because the characters determine their reaction to whatever's happening in the story. If they're angry at the other character, they're going to be angry. But if they agree with the plot, then they'll agree with the plot grudgingly. So whatever works. This is not a rule that I can imagine is a thing. Aside from, yes, you do have characters that must be similar in some way, because if they're too dissimilar, none of this is going to make any sense. Their story is going to be a whole other story. It's going to be non-related, non-connected. He's going to be this alien. You're going to be an alien to them. This other character is going to be an alien to everyone else. It's just this group of people that aren't connected. It's going to be silly.
Yeah, why are they all working together if they've all got completely different?
Yeah, imagine a mafia film where you got the Irish mafia, you got the Japanese mafia, you got the Chinese mafia, the Italian mafia. They're all unrelated. They all want the same plot, but they can't agree with each other. They're all like, it's just like, okay. I mean, that could be interesting.
I mean, that actually could be a really interesting movie. The multiple mafias all supposed to be working together on a single heist.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
and you'd have to
and
explain it.
the police.
Yeah, that would be really complicated because even though we call
the
them all
police are
mafias, they
trying
do
to-
work very differently.
The police are trying to figure out what they're going to do, and then the police end up going, you know what? Just let them tear each other apart. We'll arrest the survivors.
Yeah, if you want them to work together, it'd have to be a very complicated series of plots to say, I want X, I also want X, but I don't like you, so I have to learn to like you. We have to agree to, we have to have a whole conflict and resolve that and come together. And then we have to do it with the third person. He has to connect to both of us. And you just keep going and going until you try and argue with these people to convince them, hey, we need X. You got to come with this, but we hate each other. Yeah. And this is unholy relationship square, whatever you want to call 4 groups together to accommodate that. So yeah, you can do that. It's just very hard and long process to set this up when all you really want is a heist story where everyone has their exact role to play in a plot that's airtight. So these are complicated things to do. And she's just going, yeah, no, this is too boring. If you have everyone agree. It's like, no, heist films have that all the time. That's normal. Anyway.
To exactly. It's less important that all your characters don't look the same as each other. And this goes far beyond the visual design and cuts right to the core of characterization itself. The more distinct your characters are from each other, the more perspectives they'll have on the story they're in, the more different decisions they'll make at key points in the plot, the more things they can disagree on. And the more unique a character is in the context of the story, the more unique their arc can be from anybody else's. A character that is unique among their friends and allies gives the writer a completely different angle on the story they're all sharing. And if you take this concept to its logical conclusion, attempting to create the most unique and individual character in an already diverse cast, you find a class of characters known as the last of their kind. The last
No. That is wrong.
That's called a Mary Sue.
When you look at Eris from Final Fantasy VII, she's not out of place. She's just a flower girl. It's weird that there's a flower girl in a steampunk city. But
she is kind of out of place as a flower girl because the city basically sucks the life from the ground, which means no plants can grow, which is, why is there a flower girl somewhere where no flowers can actually grow?
Sure, but there's plenty of examples of other last of their kind, like Final Fantasy VI. You have Cyan. He's just a soldier of a dead kingdom. He's making flowers. That makes no sense, but it's you could have it either way. They don't have to be completely unique. They could just be a normal character. Oh, they have a tail. Wow, where'd you come from? Well, I'm the last of my lizard race. It's like, oh, but everything else about them is the same. The job, the personality, the desires, they're all the same. It's like, yeah, they want to survive. They want to get by, da-da-da. It does not have to be the last of some connection to argue.
That can be an additional attribute.
Yeah, it could be it could be an alien element. Oh, by the way, I remember Babylon 5 did a lot, but even I remember Crusade, specifically the thief chick was the last of her race or whatever. And she had to learn to get by, and she wanted to become a techno mage, but Galen wouldn't let him because she had to prove herself, blah blah blah. So, she looked different, but she was still a squatter trying to get by. So, no.
There were a couple of those. There were villains like that, like the evil scientist who wiped out her own race for science.
Then there was the bug that got attached to one of those researcher dudes, and he was the last. He was a weapon, that wiped out all the other, because what was pure to that race they didn't know. So the protocol was just to kill everything.
Yeah.
So
it's an general AI problem.
Yeah. So
we'll destroy ourselves the same way, because the people who run the AIs or believe that they're making AIs are just as dumb.
They don't value human life. They're teaching the AI not to value human life either, and
that's when we're done.
That's gonna kill us.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway,
Asimov had a point.
We can just forget the first 2 minutes of what she was talking about. Let's just get to the last of her kind.
Characters who, for one reason or another, are complete that everyone else like them is gone. In the real world, the last member of a soon-to-be extinct species is called an Endling, which is just way too poignant to leave out of this conversation. An Endling,
Never heard
the
of that.
last of their kind, is the only one like them in the entire story, meaning everything that defines the people they come from becomes entirely unique to them. Culture, appearance, language,
Eris is not culturally different than the people in Sector 7 or any
the
of
other people in Midgard.
they all get along. She gets along with Tifa instantly. Her mother is like gets along with, like, what are you talking about? Like, no. Who are you describing, Red?
Aang,
Oh.
I mean,
probably.
so in terms of mad scientists who are also the last of her kind, there's one in an Advance Wars game who's the last clone of an evil scientist who is trying to genocide all of humanity.
Okay.
land, special artifacts, bloodline techniques. They don't need to share them with anybody because there is nobody like them. Right? Oh, come on, don't do this. This should be the easiest thing in the world to define.
Is Naruto the last of his kind because his parents are in the Shadow Zone?
What? He has.
He's not like any of the others, and he has a speech impediment.
He's the last of his bloodline. So
So let's say yes.
I guess, but
he has 2 kids, so no, I don't know.
I just want to hurt someone. Yeah, but until he has kids, he's
Yeah, this is so stupid. Like, what?
Okay.
Anyway,
I'm just like, can she get to Superman already so I can say something?
I'm waiting for her to get to the remake of. Like, have you guys played the remake, the second part of Final Fantasy VII? I haven't.
That was Rebirth, right?
I'm waiting for her to get to the last Airbender
play
movie. That's my favorite
Oh
movie.
God. Anyway,
Is Godzilla the last of his kind because he's the first and can't have children
well,
until he has?
is
Well,
that
in the new, in the current, in the current MonsterVerse continuity, there was one other of him, but the other one died.
So you're the last of your kind until you're not.
does that imply that Godzilla was not born? He was mutated from radiation? Was that the whole?
Well, that is the original. He was mutated from radiation.
That's the original Godzilla,
Yeah, yeah.
but in the reboots, so that
in the
was
Millennium. Yeah.
Okay.
I know, but in
And
the
now
end, the whole
there's-
thing, the whole trope doesn't work when it's not a distinct species that cannot interbreed and therefore not revive his or her own culture. As long as you can have children with somebody, you can continue that culture. So it's all on you.
This is so irrelevant. Like, I could list a bunch of examples. Like with Babylon 5, the most famous one was Lorien. He's the first ever, and he's the last of his kind because the rest either died or left.
No, yeah, they left. He's not. He's only the last here.
Yeah. Because this is
There are others, but they are not here.
It's so incongruous to this plot. It's like, who cares? You have a character. He's an intelligent bat. He can talk to you. Wow, we've never had a talking bat before, except in like every other Japanese anime. There's some cute animal creature who's magical or a spirit, and they can transform into an animal or whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter. Why do you have it? What's the point? Is it exposition dumps? Is it supporting characters? Is it to allow the main character to do something in the story? What is it? That's what. This is like, oh no, if they're the last of their kind, they have to be this and completely unique. It's like, no, they don't. They could look like everyone else. It makes no difference.
Yeah, I'm waiting for to install, and you play as the last of your kind there. The last, the last person alive from Vault 111. And you're basically just a normal human like everyone else.
It would kind of only really work with the Praetorian guy in Mass Effect.
The Praetorian guy.
Was that the name? Poor
Prothean.
guy, the
Trying to remember.
the not a collector.
Prothean, the Prothean
The
guy.
Prothean. Yeah, Javik.
Yeah, that would be a
Yeah, but
proper
that's-
last of his kind.
That's DLC Mass Effect 3, and only the original Mass Effect is a good Mass Effect game, because the other two are just EA action games.
Yeah, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
But his species is gone. You for him up, so you can have him around, and we can tell you some things from thousands of years in the past.
And we have
Because
to,
he is actually the last of his kind, because he was in stasis.
50,000.
and we have to look back and see that they retcon the statues and all the flashbacks of.
They retcon the
Yeah,
flash
'cause,
from the beacon.
yeah, when you get to Ilos in the original game, the statues do look more like Cthulhu. They've got
Yeah.
tentacle.
Like at least that at least that big location with all the pods on the opposite sides of the hallway. That at least stayed consistent.
I'm not trying to
They
excuse
ended up-
the retcons.
No. I'm
They
just
ended
saying.
up changing that because they apparently they had difficulty animating the tentacles, which, yeah, it's a fucking cop out.
I wanted a tentacle Jamaican sounding dude. That'd be hilarious.
Like Davy Jones in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Something that would actually make it look like he was designed to be, unless Ilis was all just the interpretation of the people who made the statues, what they thought the Protheans looked like.
No,
It's the
so
fact that
originally the people of Ilos were Protheans, but then because they couldn't animate the tentacles, they had the last Prothean say that they were another species from before the Protheans. So
Anyway.
from a previous cycle.
Anyway, this is, I don't know where she's getting this, but it's silly. It's just subjective gobbledygook. You're like, all right.
It's a very okay, you just said it. The way it's mostly used is the last of a culture or nation, not actually the last of his species, like Superman, who then turns out has relatives, and there's the people in the, I always want to say Shadow Zone, Phantom Zone.
it's mainly just it's Kara and Zod.
All right.
Which you could say is also a trope of I'm not the last.
Exactly what it says on the box. It's 5. Only one of them. That is the. Wish it weren't true, this trope almost never actually adheres to the letter of the definition, at least not for long. A lot of characters are introduced as the last or only one of their kind, and then in a sequel or a later installment or a reboot, it'll turn out that actually there were a few more kicking around and hiding or otherwise obscured from the plot, and our former last of their kind protagonist becomes one of a bunch. The main reason this is so common is very simple. If a main character is defined entirely by being the last of something, the primary conflict for their arc will most likely be centered around exploring that.
No, not necessarily.
It's usually just bad writing.
They don't have to do that at all. They could do whatever they want. Who cares if bad writers do that way, or that's all they want to do with their character? Again, they did that with Final Fantasy VII. Aerith has all kinds of personality, and they just expanded upon it in the remakes. So,
The only significance Aerith being the last of her kind has to the plot, or to the overall plot of Final Fantasy VII, is she's the only one who can activate Holy. That's literally it. She's the only one who can activate Holy, and she instantly knows, people's secrets due to being, sort of an empath.
What makes her death more tragic and impactful.
And the primary conflict of Kung Fu Panda isn't because he's the last panda, it's because he sucks at Kung Fu. He needs to learn how to be able to fight the greatest Kung Fu master currently alive. Because Oogway basically, does the order.
I'd even say Oogway is the better Yoda.
Oogway's the best character in that entire damn franchise. Fight me.
I'll fight with you
All right.
on your side.
Wait.
Right next to you.
You want us to fight against you? Why the fuck would we do that?
No, I'll not fight with
Ugo
you.
is
I'll
the
fight
best.
with you.
Yeah,
Ugo is the best character.
yeah, it's like we'll fight for that together. That's what Whisp meant.
All right, let's go.
Anyway, yeah.
Anti-pose.
Separated from their origins and isolated with nobody else like them anywhere, can easily provide tension, tragedy, angst, mystery, and the incredibly obvious personal motivation of finding out more about themselves and their people. That can take...
I'm sorry to interrupt here, but can one of you English-speaking people explain to you what you actually mean by the word angst? Because it is directly taken from German, where angst is just translates into English as fear. How do you use angst differently in English, since you apparently use it differently from fear?
It's difficult to explain without using the word angst.
It's basically anger with being frustrated, I think.
Yeah, it's
what does that have to do with fear?
It's a lot of self-directed anger as well, if I remember correctly.
Okay. J. Jameson says angst is existential pain, and we have a word for that. It is called Weltenschmerz, which means the pain of worlds that is residing inside you and tearing at you. Is that what you mean?
You know when Batman stood on the rooftop looking over Gotham and just brooding. Yeah, a lot of people say that he's feeling angst when he's doing that.
Dread, maybe worry.
I would put it more in the frame of anger. If you look at the definitions, it's probably a lot different. But it's always someone getting frustrated, having a sense of uncertainty, and just a general sense of anger that's not straight anger. It's not like pure, like I'm angry because the world is not operating the same way as I think. I'm frustrated because it happened so many times. I'm doing this over again.
Is it more related to teenage frustration?
Yeah. Maybe.
Yes. Because a lot of times you'll see the term teen angst. And it's definitely more common among teenagers.
It could be a portmanteau of anger and anxiety. I don't know. It could be that.
Yeah, that just looks like the German word.
Maybe.
That might make more sense. Or it just you use the word uncertainty. That would be then the only root connection between the two. Because fear is a product of uncertainty. Well, not necessarily. It can also be the imagined certainty or the knowledge of a threat that is objectively true. So it's just a type of fear. This is a stupid word, by the way.
It's a slang term.
Weltenschmerz, because that's usually how we describe the juveniles, and what I've gone through that phase too, where it's just all the world is wrong, and I can't do anything about it, but I must fight all this shit, and the world is horrible, and so is that it?
It is because anger comes from not getting or not thinking what you wanted in reality. So reality is the door you smack your foot on. You never wanted to do that. You didn't know the door was there, and you're angry at the universe because you weren't paying attention. So it's a part of that, and it's part of the desires of the young, as we say, the angsty teenager who doesn't get what they want or didn't know what they were expecting they got. So it's not the best term to describe people growing up. But
angry at the universe or yourself.
Sure.
I think the almost extravagant term, or almost a bit romantic term, Weltenschmerz, but fits it well, because this teenage emotion is way over the top. Because the teenager does not yet know how to process these things. So they're all too big, they're all too much, and they're all insurmountable. And that creates the dread.
Sure. That sounds good. Okay. We're going to keep going.
But one of them is finding more people like them. Many last of their kinds were separated from their people at a very young age and don't know anything about their origins when they start off, and the ones who become the last of their kind when they're older will probably be more determined to find other remnants of the world they knew. So while some characters who are the last of their kind will actually stay that way through to the end, the longer a story about these guys goes on, the more likely it is that it'll turn out that they're not actually the last, because one of the juiciest ways to explore a character's mysterious origin is to introduce more characters who share that origin. This is a huge problem in long-form comics, which are already notorious for continuity snarls. For instance,
Goku was never the last of his kind, because the same conversation that was revealed, his brother was also revealed as well. So that doesn't count.
Yeah, he was only the only of his kind on Earth.
On Earth, yes, but in general, no.
I don't think anyone...
1938, with the origin story that he was the last son of Krypton, the sole survivor of a total planetary apocalypse saved by his scientist parents Moses style in an intergalactic basket in the bulrushes. He was the only Kryptonian on Earth, and his power set, even though it drifted and changed over the years, came from his unique alien physiology and how it was affected by Earth's gravity and yellow sun. And as far as I can tell from my cursory research on the subject, Superman was the only surviving Kryptonian for 20 real years, until 1958, when the Bottle City of Kandor was introduced, a Kryptonian city that was shrunken and abducted en masse by Brainiac before the planet exploded. Its permanent shrunken state handily prevented it from doing much to undercut Superman's last son of Krypton thing, since it's not like a city's worth of Supermen popped out of the woodwork to make things complicated on Earth. But 1 year later, Supergirl was introduced, Superman's cousin, who also survived the planet going boom, and then in 1961 we started getting Kryptonian bad guys like General Zod. At this point, Superman is only the last son of Krypton because it makes for a killer subtitle. It hasn't been factually true in decades. Something similar happened in Dragon Ball, where for the first several arcs of the manga, it was never indicated that Goku was the last of anything. He was just weird, a super strong kid with a monkey tail. In a world with Triclopses, ageless psychic toddlers, shape-shifting pigmen, and talking animals, a weird kid with a tail didn't really raise any eyebrows until the Saiyan saga hit, and it turned out that Goku was an alien, one of only 4 survivors of the destruction of their home planet, soon to be 2 survivors, followed by a brief...
She is surprisingly correct about her tearing apart the trope this time.
I want to know where she was getting those general ideas of, oh, if they're the last of their kind, we'd have to seek them out. It's like, are you talking about an RPG, a game? What are you talking about? Give me a reference, because this is not a staple of the trope. You can just have it.
Goku was never the last of his kind.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier.
She admitted that.
Yeah.
It's just an odd thing to mention. Like, again, where is she getting this rule from, and why?
I mean, why does she have to bring him up? Like, at all?
There's so many episodes of Star Trek, Babylon 5 that do this, and it's like, it's not important. It's always some big war, some big destruction, and that it's a tragedy. Who cares? It's happened a long time ago. The plot is the main thing. We don't need to know that. This is weird.
Stint as insane when Vegeta winds up dead for a few extra long minutes. Non-canon and semi-canon movies like piling on more surviving Saiyans because it's an easy formula for a villain of the week, and as long as they die at the end, it doesn't really do much to the Earth-based status quo. So, what are we even talking about here? We're trying to define a trope, and we've just cut ourselves off at the knee.
We're trying to get past the 20-minute mark, I believe.
I don't know what you're doing, honey.
the knees by saying the only definition that makes sense doesn't even apply to most of the iconic examples. What is the point of a character who's the last of their kind if it turns out they're not even the last of their kind? How does that define the character in any meaningful way? They're just a character at that point. Well, we can sort of finagle this. A character who is the last or only one of their kind only needs to believe this about themselves for a solid chunk of the story for this trope to manifest in the plot.
So we just have Eris saying, I'm the last ancient, and then no one cares. And then Hojo comes by and says, oh, look, there's the city where we're going to go do a thing. It's like, okay, we're going to stop Hojo. So what does it matter, Red? Like, why are you bringing this up? What's the point?
I mean, so here's one thing that appears to be a bit of a plot hole in Final Fantasy VII. Nanaki is the last of his kind.
Really?
So he's believed to be the last of his kind, but then in the ending, after the credits, you see him, I think it's 200 years later, with 2 children.
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
So obviously there's another member of his kind.
Yeah, so
just hiding somewhere.
This is what I don't understand. Why does she care? Because we've seen this in short story format or short stories in TV, like Bab 5, where it's not important what number they are in terms of population. If it's part, like we have, a ranger on, the only ranger on the station. It's like, whoop-de-doo. We have, was a Death Seeker or the Death Collector, only one on the station at the time. So it's like, yeah, who cares? That's what, they're there as a unique story element, as a character, and their station, their genetics is not that important. It's just, a weird unknown element, an alien, a soldier, whatever. It's like, unique thing, which she sort of was trying to point at.
Yeah, I think she's still rambly, but I think with this instance, she is a little bit more structured and a little bit more critical and objective, if I may dare to use the word with her, on the topic. It's still over the place, not all over the place, but it's still quite over the place. And I think she's doing better than usual.
It sounds like a professor you have at like first year, I don't know, social studies, and they're trying to explain an African tribe. And they're like, well, we observed this 20 years ago, but then we found out last year it was wrong. And you're like, okay. So you're going to change the books? You're going to stop selling? No, we're just going to make a publication and keep studying. It's like, okay.
What's the point in bringing up the 20-year ago thing?
All right.
Unless you're teaching history.
It depends on the studies. Sociology changes here and there, not too quickly, but it's just, and it's those like you have to pay attention. Someone does a study on apes or an African tribe or whatever, and you're like, okay, cool. Does that change how we understand them? Not really, just new information. Like, okay, great. So, and they're just rambling on about new information as opposed to understanding what it means. Anyway, this is still not. We're still at square nothing. We're still waiting.
Who thinks they're the last or has been told they're the last and refuses to believe it has access to exactly the same space of characterization and subplots as a character who really is the.
It could be, I think I'm the richest person in the room. I'm the smartest person in the room. I could beat you at chess and they lose. Oh, what a twist of fate! I did not expect that. My character.
I was misinformed.
Yeah.
I'm the sexiest person in this chat.
The character was incorrect on what they thought. Oh. What a twist.
They're isolated, alone. They're carrying on the legacy of their people, or they may know.
Eris is not isolated or alone. She has many friends. She's very cheerful. She had a boyfriend once, and now she likes Cloud, and she likes her mom and Tifa and all the other friends she meets, etc., etc. Like, this is... Odo is not alone. He never. He loves. Was it Kira?
He doesn't know whether he is the last of his kind. He just doesn't know anything.
Yeah, he's very dedicated to his job. He's very serious. He's astute. Good Lord. He is not defined.
He wants to figure out where he comes from, but he has no leads.
The changeling man is not defined by being just a changeling. That was never his predicament.
Absolutely nothing about their people or even themselves. They might not have any context for who they are or where they came from, and uncovering that might be their primary motivation. Characters who are really the last of their kind can do this readily, but characters who only think or wonder if they're the last of their kind can be racked with just as much uncertainty and angst. Maybe.
Yeah, but you just described Superman. He thought he was the last of his kind, and then he wasn't. What's your point?
Can you show us an example of a true example of this trope?
I guess Odo would be a good example of that because he had no idea.
I think he's the last of his kind. He doesn't know anything about his kind.
Would Aang be a good example? Oh wait a minute, we don't want more Avatar stuff, do we? We want something else.
Yeah, but Aang would be the closest thing to that, I would say.
Right. Yeah, but isn't the problem with this woman that she always goes back to Avatar? So yeah.
Until
a different example would be nice.
Unless he would have children.
I mean...
Which he should have, because he had a lovey-dovey thing with...
Yeah, in Legend of Korra, he has a son who's a bender.
Yeah, so he's not the last of his kind anymore.
What's his name? I forgot his name. He's the best character in that series. He
is. Great. Now, see, you shouldn't have said that you can't remember the name, because now I can't remember it either. I hate when that happens. Yes, Tenzin.
All right.
Don't know for sure. Sometimes these characters like them or trying to uncover their past, and in these contexts it makes sense that as part of their happy ending they'd run into more of their people and get the answers they've been seeking all along. By definition, this means they aren't really the last of their kind, but that doesn't really matter because the entire point of the story still hinges on that question. Are they really the last, and if not, will they be able to find the others? One series that builds this up pretty organically is the Kung Fu Panda trilogy. In the first movie, Po is the only panda we see, but this is never really addressed as anything too noteworthy. His dad is a goose and he's a bit of a fish out of water, but mostly he's just characterized as a kung fu fanboy in a world of actual badasses. Most of the Furious Five are also the only animals of their specific species that we see in the movie. Tigress is the only tiger, Mantis is the only bug, Viper is the only snake, etc. In fact, the only animals that we really see more than one of are basically the background extras.
So you're saying they're not defined by their genetics and their character?
It's because they all come to the bestest dojo there is.
And
the villains are all unique as well. So, because it's for the children to be able to keep apart the characters.
It is a fun thing in this where they do use their specific animal traits as part of their combat forms. Otherwise, there's not really much that sets them apart from background characters other than them being main characters.
That is also because Kung Fu takes many of its forms from animals.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So this is just doing it backwards. That's the whole joke.
They are the animals that the styles are named after. Brain style, cobra style. Even though she's not a cobra, but tiger, monkey, and monkey fist is it? Tiger Claw, Monkey Fist, and Mantis style. I don't know about Red Panda though. What do Red Pandas have to do with Kung Fu?
How would you? There's no Red Panda.
Isn't she for a Red Panda?
No.
No? Why is she for then?
Some red thing. What is the animal representative for Drunken Master style?
I thought that would be I don't actually know. I thought it might be Monkey Fist, probably.
All right.
I would have just thought it's an inanimate bottle. Chat says Shifu is a red panda. He doesn't look like one to me, but okay, I'll fly with that.
All right.
And rhino prison guards. The fact that then the sequel dives really heavily into this question of where Po came from, how he got adopted by a goose, and where his biological parents factored into all this. The story eventually unpacks that the reason Po is the only panda we've ever seen is that the villain of Kung Fu Panda 2 did a full-on panda genocide to try and avert a prophecy of doom, and Po only survived because his mother sacrificed herself to save him. The emotional arc of Kung Fu Panda 2 is centered on Po unpacking his repressed memories and coming to terms with who he is, which he does in the burned out
All standard tropes, by the way.
which he does in the burned out
The
remains
panda
of
village was unbearable.
Isn't
It
the
went
main
on for so
villain?
long.
So isn't the main villain of Kung Fu Panda 2 also? Didn't he also become the last of his kind? It was. Because his parents disowned him because they were making weapons, and I know that much, but
I mean,
it's
it's
supposed to be
mirroring of the hero.
it's supposed to be a dark mirror of Poe. So
It's so long ago I saw that movie, but it sounds right.
All right.
what was once his home. In the first movie, Po is just the only panda. In the sequel, Po is the last panda. Until the very last scene of the movie when we get a glimpse of a hidden panda village and Po's father, which becomes the Kung Fu Panda 3, confirming one in a community by the end of 3 doesn't invalidate his last of his kind revelation in 2. In fact, it kind of does this interesting thing where there are a few points in Kung Fu Panda 3 where there are things that come naturally to the pandas of the hidden village that Po hears about and is like, oh, that makes perfect sense and it never occurred to me because I wasn't raised in a community of people that were like me. There's something kind of profound about the fact that Po was raised entirely separate from anybody else like him, and there's this strong arc in the first movie especially that Po kind of always feels like he's doing something wrong, and if you're in the audience and you're like neurodivergent or in other ways part of a community of people who mostly don't really think.
oh, for fuck's sake.
Please don't use that word, Red.
Let's just disregard that. If you're in the audience and you have a mental condition, thanks, Red. That's great.
You're in the audience and you're stupid.
That word should only ever count for autism, not for your weird mental disorders like borderline.
Or fetishes.
Or your made-up narcissistic magical crap.
If you're in the audience and you're not paying attention, yeah, that's fine. Okay.
You can sort of end up feeling like, oh, / only one of people like him in this supportive community, at least after the first movie, of people who do like and care about him but don't really know what his needs are and what things he would naturally be good at. Like in the first movie, Master Shifu has to do a lot of work to figure out how to properly train Po because Po is not like anybody else he's ever taught. And in the first movie, it's because Po is a big goofy panda kung fu fanboy who hasn't actually been training from day one. But in the second movie, it kind of becomes clear that oh, Po is actually separated from his environment because he is different from everybody around him. And then in the third movie, we get a glimpse of people like him who like rolling around and eating food and appreciate the fact that he's big and squishy. So there is a very interesting microcosm of the arc a character who is the last of their kind can go through just in this trilogy of movies, with Po experiencing alienation and isolation, being the only one of his kind but not really recognizing that, and then Po experiencing the delayed tragedy of understanding why and how he became separated from his people, and then Po experiencing this strange feeling of understanding and belonging for the first time in his life when he rejoins his family at the end of 3.
So this has nothing to do with being the last of your kind. This is just being removed from a group of people like you, like your friends or your society or your school or whatever, and then going through this journey. That's the story that's being told. The thing that, oh, he's unique can be applied to any of those characters in the first film. And if we focused on them and they were removed from their families or their communities or their societies, and we learn there's more snake people or there's more, goat people, whatever is in Kung Fu Panda. So what's the point, Red, that they're the last of their kind? Is it just all one big lie?
if anything, what this rather illustrates is that your culture only stands out as unique when you are not with your own people. And you only notice how different you are when you are with other people in foreign places.
Which would only be applicable to this story because that's what this movie has in its story. It has, or the third act of this trilogy. I guess there's a fourth one coming out too. But it's like this whole premise is stupid. This whole premise is, well, they're the last of their kind. It's like, well, it was never really a factor until the second film. And they discovered, oh no, he's not the last of his kind. He just lost his parents in his town he was born into.
Yeah. For example, I recently learned that from acquaintances who were looking for for apartments here, who were working in university and such, that they were always confused when they saw pictures of apartments that were like pre-furniture to look nice. Then why do you Germans always have a bookshelf in your bathrooms? And I thought, like, well, you don't? In India or wherever you're from? Like, no. And I thought, well, of course, to read when you're on the toilet, because you take your time. Or when you take a bath. Because we are reading people. It exists a bit in Eastern Europe as well.
Yeah.
But apparently this is an ultra-German thing that I wasn't aware of, was not common.
You probably don't want to take too long on the toilet if you have to bring a book with you. That would probably have some problems or other kinds of problems in how fast you read. And, well, the bath might be fun, but water and paper,
Yeah, it takes 2 minutes to have a shit and then you're done. How much of a book can you
read? If it doesn't,
it will also tell you that would be sufficient time on the toilet. But that doesn't mean that you can't read a page or two in that time.
That's going to take a while to finish that book.
Anyway.
I read through Dune like that.
Oh, dear. Okay.
It is also where I read all the hard books, because the crap books, because shit goes in, shit goes out. I'm talking to you, Shad.
Oh. Anyway, let's get on with her rambling.
Without found family that he gained over the last 2 movies, who
Found
do understand him
family.
in a different way that the people of his home village, who don't do martial arts, can't really understand. None of that was scripted. Apparently, I just had a lot of thoughts about Kung Fu Panda. Okay, back on script. One of the most egregious examples of this kind of writing shenaniganery is probably The Last Unicorn. The protagonist and title character of the story starts off by hearing a pair of hunters saying that there are no other unicorns left, followed by a gorgeous musical number about how the last unicorn is beautiful and alone at the end of everything. And the first thing the unicorn does when the movie really gets going is say, well, that's not right. There's absolutely no way. I'm the last unicorn. And sets out into the world to find out what happened to the others, and she turns out to be 100% correct. And at the end of the story, all the other unicorns are released from their imprisonment in the ocean and sent back out into the world. In no way, shape, or form is she the last unicorn. She at no point believes she is the last unicorn. She doesn't even spend some of the movie as a unicorn. But it makes a great title and a banging musical number, and it would have been much less poignant to call it The Last Unicorn in This Zip Code. The temporarily isolated unicorn. This town ain't big enough for 2 unicorns. But there's a good reason this keeps happening. From a character arc standpoint, there is no difference between a character who is a true Endling and a character who only thinks they are. They have the same internal struggles, the same questions of identity. It's just a matter of what they find at the end of that part of their journey.
Could you give me an example what you're talking about? It doesn't matter? If it doesn't matter, why and how is it a trope? Why and how does it keep being used? What's the point?
I want examples of actual cases of this trope, not just the fake, flimsy, later subverted versions.
She gave an example of The Last Unicorn, which is the title of the film, but the character does not think they're the last. So I'm like, so what's the point?
Yeah, that again isn't the fulfillment of the trope. At least not by her definition.
It's as if the writer has this concept for a story that they're just going to write, and they have things called titles. And if the title is called The Unicorn, then what? A bunch of hunters...
will be the finale.
Yeah, the bunch of hunters said, this is the last unicorn. And the main character's like, nope. Let me go find them. I know where they are. And the whole journey is to get to them. It's like, oh, they're in the ocean. Great. Wow, right? It's as if your entire premise of what it means to be the last of something does not apply here. Okay, well, whatever. Let's keep going.
Characters who are the last of their kind frequently don't stay that way for long. If a character's primary strength in the narrative is how unique they are and how they have abilities that nobody else does, one of the simplest ways to provide an absolute gut drop of an antagonist is to pit them against somebody who has those exact same abilities. Maybe somebody who has those abilities and training in how to actually use them to their full potential. When a character has been defined by being completely unlike anyone else in the story, one of the scariest things they can be faced with is a level playing field. And it's always a fun oh shit moment when a character who's had an absolute superlative advantage in some specific ability, like just being better than all their allies at raw strength or weapons training or magic talent, turns out to be average at best by the standards of their people and gets absolutely stomped at their one thing by someone who's legitimately impressive by the standards of the greater community. And this can be...
Are we describing Dragon Ball, or are we just talking in general? Because what are we doing?
Yeah, this is an extremely generalized thing.
I think her editor is just putting random stuff on again. Because the editor couldn't find anything matching what she's talking about.
We've already described... She already talked about Dragon Ball. We know where...
And even then, Dragon Ball doesn't even count.
This is...
Which she admitted.
Is she saying this is an empty trope and people are just using it for fun and or advertising as being definitive, like Final Fantasy or whatever like that?
Or is the introductory thing for a character?
I guess. And we learned, they're not the last of the thing that we thought.
But that's just, it's a unique character, and then you find more of the kind. That doesn't mean you need to start with it's the last. That's just about the uniqueness of a character.
Oh, God.
Then if you would phrase it that way with unique character who later finds others of his kind, then Odo would make sense. Then Odo would be an example. Data might even be an example when later lore is found.
Yeah, these Soong creations were the only of their kind until, well, Picard season 1 happened.
That never happened.
I try not to think about it. Anyway,
there's no Picard series. It would be nice if they had made a series with Jean-Luc Picard as the main character of his ship doing his vineyard thing, but they never made anything like that. It's a waste because now Patrick Stewart is old and dying and weird.
Yeah, he did play the best Star Trek character, but.
Yeah, it would be weird to force this weird old man who shields for communism now to force him to get on screen again. It's like forcing Bruce Willis to do something.
I liked seeing an old British man wishing he wanted to be an American president. That was kind of fun. Especially on The View. I was like, oh my God, don't do that.
No way.
Anyway.
Surprise villainous other character, not the last after all. Sometimes it's more impactful if it's just the two of them, and one of the only two survivors is evil. This applies even in stories where there wasn't ever a larger community that got whittled down. Like in Star Trek The Next Generation, Data is introduced as an entirely unique type of android, an existence that quietly puts him through profound alienation as nobody else in the universe works quite like he does. Then it turns out he has a brother, Lore, an identical android and the only other thing in the universe like him, ignoring the various other Soong-type androids that eventually get shaken out of the canon. But Lore is evil.
But as I just said, that's not a last of his kind thing. That is a one-of-a-kind thing. That's like, that would be closer to the Godzilla thing I joked about earlier, or tried to joke about. Where Godzilla is created. out of nowhere, for reasons, but out of nowhere. There's only one. Will there be another? Technically not, because he's a weird mutation. Technically he could maybe have if you do things. This is the same thing. It's not a last of the kind. Red. This is another thing. You missed the forest for a tree. Not just the trees, but a tree.
Is evil, or at least racked with profound daddy issues, and what makes this difficult is that Lore is the only other person in the universe that understands Data, and he uses this understanding to manipulate him. It's hard when your only choices are total isolation or enable a guy who keeps murdering people.
It's a Cain and Abel story.
This appears to be a weirdly common thing in sci-fi because they did the exact same thing in Doctor Who. Doctor Who, back in the day, introduced the Time Lords as the species of alien that the Doctor was one of. They were super advanced masters of time that the Doctor didn't really get along with, having stolen his time machine and ran away from all their rules and regulations. One recurring renegade Time Lord was the villainous The Master, a flamboyant schemer that seems to have been one of the most fun things about classic Doctor Who. I haven't watched as much of it as I probably could have, because I got into it when Doctor Who came back with the new series.
Oh, so you only watch the new stuff that turned crappier and crappier and crappier. You can't be bothered to actually sit down for the old good stuff.
Well,
cool.
That's the black and white stuff, yeah.
Well, the earliest ones. The first 2 seasons are actually really interesting. There's some really good sci-fi stories. There are some educational bits about them. There is the tragedy and horror of war depicted really well with the Dalek episodes in A Destroyed London. It's a pity that the Genghis Khan episodes are missing. They reconstructed it with they had the audio still, but the imagery is mostly missing. It's actually really interesting.
Doctor, and after a little bit of Great War, he explained that he was the last Time Lord, and it became clear that something terrible had happened off screen. A time war, seemingly...
Well, you wouldn't tell people that there is this other super smart, powerful guy who can control time, the Master, to these pitiful mortals who can't comprehend any of this stuff. Because that would just scare the living shit out of them.
Normal space-time in a manner so cataclysmic that it destroyed the Time Lords and the Daleks utterly, which is convenient because when it comes to tragic backstories, time travelers kind of have an automatic nuh-uh if they want to just time travel back to before everything exploded for a little pre-trauma vacation time. The Time War was so catastrophic that it kind of unmade the Time Lords in such a profound way that there didn't seem to be any going back until they did go back in a later season after I stopped watching. Continuity. Anyway, this resulted in a deeply traumatized Doctor as the only survivor of the Time Lord side, the very last of his people. Except, just kidding, of course the Master is also there. And this is played for all the drama you could want.
Because Doctor Who turned into a complete soap opera and nothing else. A soap opera for people written like you read. That's why it makes no sense. It doesn't need to. And because it's a time travel series about nonsense adventures, there doesn't need to be continuity. At least not in some sense. It would be nice if they had kept some other aspects of continuity, like the history of Earth. That would have been nice. Or the Doctor being a character that didn't get retconned further and further back in time, even before the first season. That would have been nice.
That was fucking awful.
How do you kill a cultural cornerstone? You retcon it into oblivion. Good night, Games Workshop.
You basically take it away from the people who created it.
Eventually, the Master actively chooses free card so he can die in the doctor's arms just to spite his constant attempts to make him stop murdering quite so much. Obviously, that didn't last either. The Master is too popular to let die, but at this point, that's not even a blip on the radar. For some stories, continuity is the only true enemy. This specific flavor of antagonist, another survivor of our hero's nearly extinct group, but so evil that they really test our hero's patience and/or moral code, can also play into a different and profound character arc. Intrinsic in this kind of story, where a character separated from their people of origin struggles to find their place in the world, is a very fundamental question. Are their people the place they come from, or are they the people who love them now? A character who is the last of their kind usually doesn't go through the story alone.
Do not trust the blue guy. Red wrote that he thinks more about the greater picture and the greater good, which means he will betray you for some stupid ideological fantasy. That way he thinks it's more important to sacrifice you instead of saving you. For the greater good.
The words for the greater good remind me of people. The words for the greater good remind me of people who salute and, say stuff.
Doesn't go through alone. In order to highlight their unique traits, they'll very different from them. In or miscommunications, things that come naturally to the others that don't click with the loner, or vice versa. Part of what likely drives them to seek others like themselves is that feeling of alienation that comes with being surrounded by people who like them, but on some level will never quite understand them. But if they find people who are like them and can understand them, and despite those similarities they then don't get along, it can raise some uncomfortable questions about belonging and being understood, and whether this character is doomed to be...
No, that's just how characters interact. It's nothing to do with whether they're the same type or genetically, whatever. Odo loves Kira. He wants to be with Kira. That's it. The Dominion are they want to take over the galaxy. They're evil. He's trying to stop them.
They believe they're good people who only bring peace to the galaxy by eugeniciding it.
And they have a slave race to do their war bidding. Yeah, it's like, oh, that's great.
Yeah. Like proper fascists. Red, if this is the case, why then would people need to see themselves represented on the screen when instead they are able to empathize and feel belonging to people who do not look like them? Why is this stuff that Western media has been pushing so much so important that we're all being emotionally extorted and shamed into having to endorse and like, when it is nothing but absolute narcissism and quite racist, to be honest? Can you explain that, Red? Because that seems to be a trope and quite a horrible one. It's pure poison. But you just explained that the people can actually empathize and feel belonging to people who are not like them at all, but rather the found family.
We are alone forever. This opens up a very interesting space of character conflict, where the character who formerly believed they were the last of their kind might need to decide whether they're willing to compromise their principles in order to stop being the last of their kind and be with people who are like them, or if they can't accept their people at all and instead need to choose to remain a stranger in a strange land, separate from the people they have the most in common with, often people they've been searching for the entire series, but together with the people they've slowly grown closer to whose principles they actually agree with. A real found family versus biological family kind of conflict.
So it has nothing to do with the actual last of their kind. It's just the fact that they have to make a choice of who to be with, who they believe in, who they like more.
When does Aang have to make that choice?
He has to choose between killing Ozai or somehow stopping Ozai without killing him.
That has nothing to do with any of this.
It's because it's the last part of his culture that doesn't get violated. He spends the whole time.
Yeah, but when does he have to choose between his people and his found family?
He doesn't. He just, his people
there is none,
the
because
last.
he is actually the last of his kind, and
Yeah.
she hasn't brought him up yet, which baffles me. I mean, she has 4 minutes and then 2 minutes of crazy.
Like I said, the last remnant of his culture is the vow of pacifism. That's the last part of his culture that hasn't been destroyed by that hasn't been taken from him.
All right.
That really can't fully play out unless option of reuniting with their people, which basically means they can't actually stay as the last of their kind for the whole run of the plot. You can't do this specific brand of angst with a character who's truly the last of their kind. They need both options in order to fully explore where they stand. But while these are very interesting angles to explore, not every character who's the last of their kind goes through these arcs. Some of them are well and truly isolated for the entire run of their story. Sometimes last really does mean last.
So it's as if you're describing a specific story from a specific author, and anyone can use this trope to do whatever they want.
It's just a starting point, is what she's trying to say for 17 minutes now.
I guess. What? This is so stupid. Someone drew a character. This one has white hair. Ooh, do they have white hair in this universe? Is this a genetic defect? Is it part of their tribe? This is the only character we see. They must be the last of their kind. Oh, wait. In chapter 17, they go back to their village, and there's a bunch of people with white hair. Wow. Thanks.
Does it count for Bayonetta and Jeanne, because they are together the last of their kind?
Oh, I don't know.
But she is getting into... She is gonna bring up Avatar.
Oh.
She is doing it.
All right.
Finally, she's talking about the actual trope.
Okay.
And these characters really let the tragedy of this trope show. Because for all I've said that the character arcs start the same whether or not the character is truly the last of their kind, they diverge very strongly when the character receives confirmation that there aren't any others. Some characters know this for a fact from the very beginning and have time
For example,
to grieve or come to terms with it, but other characters learn over the course of the story that there isn't anyone like them out there. When they receive absolute proof that they're alone in the universe, it changes their place in it. And more importantly, this can either rip away their core motivation, or it can replace it with something new.
So essentially, as if your parents died, or your family died, or they went away, or you went away, and they feel alone. The basic feeling is isolation, not being connected to what you knew before. Is that what the feeling you're going with, or they're going with, or the writer wanted to go with? Doesn't matter if it's a literal genetic isolation or physical. Like, it's the same emotion.
I don't know what she's on about.
And I think at this point I'm tired of the island is actually the decaying remains of some ancient giant.
Oh yeah.
That's yeah. I found this mind blowing as a kid, and now I've seen it probably 20 times. Usually in these pretentious shows made by and comics made by women.
So not
Every time, and they do it in the most boring fashion.
Not Xenoblade.
Xenoblade, the whole world is giant creatures.
Yeah.
But you're basically as if you were just the little ant walking on it, or you are basically part of the organism, like a cell of it.
All right. Cool.
That's the metaphor
I think
there.
Xenoblade does it pretty well, actually, doesn't it? It has the two giant beings locked in combat and they're frozen for some reason. And if they're ever reactivated, then the entire world is obviously destroyed.
Yeah, the humans can't live on it anymore because, well, the angle of where you build your village is gonna change. And on the Mechonis, the creatures are also the quasi, the mechanical humans are also born of the giant, just in a different way. But they also grow over time. They're basically one of the elf types of the world that get to be a couple thousand years old. You have characters there that remember the time when the giants were moving. On the Mechonis that works because they have it easier to actually go inside because the Mechonis is actually a giant mech. Anyone for whom I'm spoilering Xenoblade Chronicles 1, listen away for 5 seconds, get the fucking game. Because in the head of the Mechonis is a control panel where you can mecha control the fucking thing and pilot it.
You can pilot half of the world.
You can pilot half of the world.
The entire world, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, and then bitch slap the other half of the world. It's beautiful. That scene is absolutely amazing because one of these things where you think, oh, the game is over because God, who used you as a host to revive himself, who looks like you, kills you through his agent, who was your uncle, who raised you, and then and then the other guy who knew that from the Mechonis wants to kill you, and then takes control of the Mechonis, and in this giant room, all these screens, these holographic screens, all switch on, and it's as if you're looking out of the eyes of the Mechonis all of a sudden, with like, as if it's open. It is an absolutely breathtaking view. It was so on the Wii. It is one of the scenes that is great on the 3DS, actually, with the 3D effect. But I think the game really shines on the big screen. So that's something that I'm happy for the HD remake for.
Was that on Wii U or Switch?
It was on the Wii, and then there was a re-release on the 3DS.
The HD one.
No,
the HD one.
The 3DS couldn't do a free HD one. They made an HD re-release on the Switch. And in this collector's edition, they put a fucking vinyl with the soundtrack. The soundtrack comes with vinyl. I have no idea how to play that.
Didn't you need an old record player for it?
Yeah, and they do exist nowadays. There are still people producing them. As also some metal bands release their albums on vinyl next to the actual CD. And some of these vinyl players nowadays, they have USB slots where they can instant convert the music from the vinyl to MP3.
There is debate on whether CDs are better or vinyl. I don't see a lot of people talking up cassette tapes because
cassettes are shit.
The only cassettes I see people talk up are the videotapes, because the quality in videotapes is sometimes higher quality than what you can find on DVD.
Well, because it's a completely different medium. It's a non-digital medium.
Yeah,
it's like a digital camera versus film, and the chemical process is just way more detailed if you have the right equipment for it. And the thing with vinyl is, one, it has its own sound to it. The other thing is that in order to make it this really amazing experience, you need to invest in a lot of really good equipment. So the audiophiles can go overboard with that, but there is a grain of truth in having good sound equipment.
All right, let's keep going.
Can't leave them unchanged because it represents This character is no longer searching for their people because they know unquestioningly that that search is pointless. The world may be big and full of potential and wonderful, interesting people, but none of those people are the people they want to find. A character who is the last has a lot of decisions to make. They represent the totality of their people. If there's some kind of responsibility those people shared, it's now totally on them to keep it going. And if there's some principle they valued, the Endling needs to decide how to uphold it. And I think I've been commendably patient in waiting this long to bring up Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yes, we are all surprised,
It's
Red.
central
We are
to the entire
absolutely-
plot. It's literally
we're proud
in the
of you.
name. I promise I've watched more shows than just this one. Now, of course, Avatar.
It's also in the name of The Last Jedi.
Oh God, no.
And other lasty things where it isn't the last. So
The Last of the Mohicans, The Last Samurai.
yeah, The Last Samurai is how is he the last samurai? There are tons of other samurai. Is he the last who's made samurai?
The last white guy samurai.
Yeah, it's Tom
after
Cruise.
John Blackthorne.
All right, 1812. We have 4 minutes left.
Airbender is exactly what it says on the rest of the air nomads, a fact he categorically does not believe for the first couple episodes. Sure, he got frozen in an iceberg for a little while, but when he ran away there were tons of air nomads, and the threat of war was just a distant fire on the horizon, nothing more than a reason for the air nomad elders to rip away Aang's childhood as quickly as possible to get the Avatar ready for war. Everyone keeps telling him that nobody's seen an airbender in a full 100 years, but that doesn't prove anything. There could be tons of explanations. Maybe they're all just hiding. Aang is 12 years old, and from his perspective he's only been gone a few days. Even if intellectually he might know that something is probably wrong, emotionally he cannot possibly have processed that at this point. So they kick off the 3rd episode of the show with Aang excitedly telling Katara he can't wait to show her his home, the Southern Air Temple. Katara is more cautious about the whole thing, in large part because Aang is so enthusiastic and happy. It doesn't really seem to have occurred to him that things could have actually gotten bad. So she keeps trying to prepare him for the worst, but he keeps justifying why there's definitely nothing to worry about. There's no way the Firebenders could have even reached the temple. Sure, he's heard that the Fire Nation has killed a lot of people, but it's not really real to him yet. Aang has a brief flash of ennui when they reach the Air Temple, and he notices how there's nobody around, no people, no animals, etc., etc. But Sokka quickly distracts him, and his sunny attitude bounces back immediately. But there's this feeling of dread that hangs over the episode, especially on a rewatch. The Air Temple is perfectly preserved, it's just deserted and lifeless compared to Aang's vibrant flashbacks. It doesn't look particularly burned or scarred or damaged, and any signs of war are pretty easily concealed, but it's completely empty. Katara and Sokka learn very early that Firebenders made it up there after all, and if the Airbenders were in any fit state after that, they probably would have cleaned up a little bit. Aang is happy and enthusiastic and laughing, and Sokka and Katara are trying to spare him from the pain of revelation that they know is coming. They can't protect him from the horror. The horror has already happened. Every bit of comic relief and whimsy just feels like setup for the moment it all comes crashing down, and when that inevitably happens, Aang is so overwhelmed with horror and
That was a really tough scene. I did not expect that one in this kid's show.
Yeah, to show the effects of genocide in a children's cartoon.
Yeah, and
But
in a mature, somber way. And that is what made this show so great. It did not embellish it. It did not what's the word? It did not obsess with it. It did not constantly bring it up, repeat it. In any of these crap shows today, they would just, every few episodes, they would bring up these pictures.
Remember
as
the time the
flashbacks
Fire Nation
constantly.
committed genocide.
Yeah, and it would just constantly bring them as flashbacks because they're so great, so well drawn, and so emotionally impactful, and thereby lose their impact. Because here, this is by the end of the show, you have forgotten this, and then when you rewatch it again, you may remember, oh, there's this coming. Oh shit!
Yeah.
This is
even,
what made it great.
Even on a first viewing, does that, as soon as you see the Firebender helmet, there's that sense of dread immediately, because you know that the Fire Nation have been here, and that's the reason it's abandoned, because the Fire Nation came
serious. Yeah, this is a serious world, a serious show. Even if there's not a lot of death in it. Here, this is the tragedy of the broken world.
And kills people all the time. This is.
But not he doesn't stab them.
He
does the indirect things. Fate could save them.
Most of it's unintentional too. He's trying to avoid killing people, but he ends up putting them in positions where they're going to die anyway.
Yeah,
but here
inevitable. But this is something else. This here is deliberate. This was
an entire people
of deliberate
gone.
killing, and this is the destroyed, ripped away, the lost world that forces him to mature. Even if he doesn't always show it on the outside, he always carries this in him, and that is what is the great writing about this show. Nitpick it all you want. This show was bloody amazing, written for children, and mature, consistent as it could be. It stands the test of time.
You do actually see another reference to this, the Airbender genocide, in the second to last episode of the second series with the guru when he's doing his meditating. There's that scene where he sees all the Airbenders.
You mean
and in order to open his...
You mean second season, right?
So yeah.
Okay.
When he's meditating with Guru Pratik, he needs to open the chakra by letting go of his grief.
Mm-hmm. Which brings it back. It's just what I said. It's perfect. He carries it with him all this time.
Both scenes are just beautiful.
Yeah, and so to go by her trope, Aang again does what all the others do. If you grind your teeth, but except Korra for the hypothetical here, but it would have happened. That part of him having children with Katara would have happened anyway. That I think is a logical consequence of the end of this show. However, there we have the problem. Aang did revive his culture. He restarted it with Tenzin, with his son.
Mm.
And then Korra comes along and fucks it all over and truly destroys it with this weeaboo shit. Oh, but there are more airbenders now. Yeah, but they're not air nomads. Oh, but we're teaching them now, and you're turning them into weirdos. This is not the same thing. The air nomads, the quotation mark air nomads, that they were then training in Korra, that were not the children of Tenzin, which get the excuse that they're children. But these other guys who they then get, they will never be air nomads in the sense of the culture of the air nomads. Thanks, Korra.
Yeah, it's just some random spirit bullshit.
Yeah, you could have only rebuilt the air nomads properly through a slow regrowth through Tenzin's line.
I forgot. Was it the same series of Korra where so was it the same season where there was that guy Zahir?
Oh, what about Zahir?
Was it the same season that he was the main villain of, where all the other Airbenders appeared?
Mainly because that's how Zahir got his powers.
I know,
really
but
stupid
I'm asking...
to name him Zahir, which is in a pun towards a wind phenomenon. So why would he already have a wind-related name and then get the wind powers that he fanboys over?
So he might have given himself a name because he's a fanboy, but as for the wind-related powers, that's just laser writing.
Yeah, which he can perfectly use instantly because he thought about it.
My actual question was it the same season where he was the main villain? Where
I think so, because that at the end of one season you get the spirit opening crap, and that leads to more benders popping up, including people with air power at random. Like, this is the thing, at random popping up with air powers, when before this is a culturally locked thing. You would not find an an earthbender with any of the Arctic tribes. You would not find a waterbender in the Fire Nation. Now it's just it's just random. Everybody gets a chance. Sounds horrible. Complete destruction of the whole thing, and they did rewrite the entire pre-story after all to get this, to justify this. So we see the exact... Korra effectively did the exact thing that other franchises did, that Disney did with Star Wars, where they retcon the past into fitting their agenda, where Warhammer now, the retconning is not just bad writing and bad writing excuses, but is also ideologically driven, where they retcon the past now so much that they destroy the setting entirely, not just through their stupid Mary Sue characters like Belisario's Call, but other shit, whom I already thought is a siege agent, but that's another story. They do it with everything. You find this everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, didn't they also retcon nonsense about, there's female witches now too, and when they get to be witches, they don't always change in their looks, because women can't lose their looks, their prettiness. They have to be just themselves. And that's where you see the narcissism creep in.
Yeah, representation is just cancerous.
All right, let's keep going. You got 2 minutes left.
Grief that he immediately loses himself to the Avatar state. Sokka and Katara manage to bring him back out of it, and by the end of the episode he's cheerful and laughing again, but it's clearly a little bit of an act this time, and he remains consistently very protective of the last remnants of air nomad culture, and very, very upset when they're threatened, both by antagonists like the bad guys that kidnap Appa, and by other good guys like the inventors with flying machines that set up shop in the abandoned Northern Air Temple. That one's extra cruel because it briefly gives Aang false hope that some airbenders did survive, and Aang's not too happy seeing his sacred temple stuffed full of machinery. And in the final conflict of the show, Aang struggles to find a way to defeat Fire Lord Ozai while upholding the central air nomad tenet of pacifism, a decision he gets flack for from every other main character, who would be immediately down to kill the dude that commands and represents the regime burning their homes and killing their loved ones. But it's a decision that carries a lot of meaning when it comes from Aang. Previous air nomad avatars could sacrifice their personal spiritual well-being to maintain balance in the world because there were other air nomads who could keep their practices alive. In Search of the Avatar, Sozin slaughtered the air nomads in a conflict so quick and casual it's relegated to one line in his autobiography. The air nomads were gentle pacifists who practiced spiritual...
All right, we don't need to listen to that.
Yeah, I mean, she is correctly summarizing, not summarizing, recounting what's happening, which I also just did, but...
We've already said it all anyway, so...
Yeah. Her whole trying to explain a trope is a complete failure. The structure is messy. It's better than usual. I believe that wholeheartedly. It's better than usual, but there's still a way to go, Red. You need proper structure.
We have some memes for today. I'm not gonna read all those, but I like the idea of Superman starting a thread and people replying to it. I'll read those later. Oh my god, what's that? It's bigger Jaws. What? There's 2 Jaws.
Bigger Jaws.
Smuggling on my space station is more likely than you think. Free Quark check? What? You get your toilet book out of here, and I won't jump over this counter and punch you in the brain.
What?
Your toilet book. Oh my god.
Toilet book.
For the greater good. The greater good!
Got it!
For the greater good.
Got it!
As soon as you mentioned actually a giant mech, and then we have...
The
Iron Giant.
no, it's Bionicle.
what is
It's
it?
Matanui.
Okay. The
Well,
first
Ma-
Weeaboo...
Don't get into Bionicle lore.
Oh boy.
You will not get out of it.
I've never had the
As-
dream.
You say
Don't-
that as
don't-
you
don't
say that
start.
as you say that as if I'd want to get out of it.
Am I?
When you get old books and it has all the important highlights.
First weeaboo.
Yeah, Korra destroyed that too.
Last, I have severed all earthly ties. My airbending prowess grows evermore. Soon the avatar will look away your bending, lol.
Kill the past. Destroy it if you have to.
I'm-
Kills all the previous avatars.
And just kills
Okay.
that
Quite
guy.
literally.
Yeah.
Wait, nobody put Tachikoma in.
Yeah, why didn't he?
Sad.
Right? Why didn't Tencent do that? I mean, it was established in that whole thing was basically used in the first season of Korra as the main thing that the villains did in a
Bloodbending.
lesser version.
That's a waterbending thing, though.
Doesn't matter. They lock the bending of people.
Yeah. So the avatar did it by energy bending, and what's his face did it by blood bending. Amon. Yeah, Amon did it by blood bending. So
Yeah, but his followers didn't do that. They just hit people on their key points. Which locked their key, so they couldn't
Key blocking.
move or bend. And Tencent could have done this. Not this way, but he could have done this.
Well, this is getting reduced into a conversation about one show, which she saved till the end, and it's like, okay, whatever. She kept rambling on about nothing, so... Jeez, that was bad.
It's red. What do you expect?
She just doesn't stop talking. You're like, honey, do you understand what you're trying to do with this conversation? Are you just here to talk about your show and find a trope in it and somehow connect it to your favorite other shows? Is that it? Is that all you're doing?
It's off the cuff.
that's it,
rambling.
Bender.
It's
Yes.
a little bit more structured, at least this time. A bit more ordered. But it's still not. Here is the overall topic, and then give a, instead of doing her little stupid comics there, she could provide a proper chart of what is the main trope and what are the subtypes, and then what are the branches where that goes off, where it starts with unique character that seems to be believes or doesn't believe to be the last of whatever, and then you branch off from how the story goes from there, whether that is the actual case, whether it turns out, oh, it wasn't the case, or something else, etc. Because that is how you would do a trope analysis, with where is this tool in the story used and where does it lead to? What can it be used for? That's not what she did.
Either way, this is such a simple thing to understand. It's such an easy thing to design a character with, and we see it all the time in science fiction. It's nothing special, and it hardly requires that level of, well, whatever you call interpretation that she was doing.
I don't see there was interpretation. She was just rambling to get over 20 minutes.
I guess, I don't know. These are horrible. All these videos of hers, we always have to listen to it and we go, Wow, that's highly subjective. Wow, you're rambling about a certain interpretation from one story, and then you're saying, but, or, and then giving a complete opposite example. And you're like, why did we just listen to that? And then giving an example of something else. It just keeps going. I don't know what she does this or why she does this. Anyone could go to the trope page, read it yourself, and get a better understanding in half the time. And maybe actually write something if you're inspired to do so, as opposed to listening to this interpretation and then another iteration, another generalized statement. And you're like, oh my God, this is not how you teach people.
Didn't she write a book, or was it Lindsay Ellis?
Lindsay Ellis wrote a book. That was about herself.
Huh.
Anyway, that was painful. Let's never do that again. So
You're going to do it next week.
Time. And when you're on the toilet, don't play with your smartphone. Read a book.
oh my God.
Too late.
Yeah.
Let's not do anything with our hands.
Well, you're not. How do you? How
do you want?
Smart. You're doing it. Then you're doing it in the wrong order.
I don't want to know the order. It's fine. Anyway, that was a painful experience. I hope you guys had fun. I'm pretty exhausted just listening to that. So
Anyway,
have yourself a good Saturday. We'll talk to you guys later. I don't know what's happening
Are we
tomorrow.
off?
No, we're still going.
The
No.
only paper. So the only paper I want in my hand when I'm on the toilet is what I'm going to use to wipe my ass with.
It could be a really bad book.
Okay, that's enough. Anyway, have yourself a good one. Good night.
Good night.